I'm Murray Walker, and my life is a story of obsession. An obsession with cars, an obsession with bikes, an obsession with the growl and roar of a racing engine. I'm fanatical, unreformed and unrepentant, and I can safely say that nothing anyone can do or say will ever change that.
The man is hard to describe because he's above everybody else, and somebody who's iconic and who is beyond doubt a legend in their lifetime in a sport. That's exactly, there is no one, in my opinion, bigger than Murray Walker in Formula One.
Wow, my God!
And look at that! And Mansell is trying to go through, goes off, both of them!
Give him a boring race and he'll make it exciting.
Bordering on fanaticism.
A raving lunatic!
Murray had sort of two-stroke voice.
Just the sound, he has a very, very unusual voice.
You don't need to see Murray to know it's Murray.
It cuts through the air.
And look at that! This is fantastic! Schumacher still marginally ahead!
He did make a few mistakes.
That's what we love Murray for.
Murrayisms, they call them.
I'm going to stop the stopwatch and the wheel stop.
Yeah, Murrayisms.
You get drawn in, and he brings you in to the whole event.
So excited.
Tremendously exhilarated.
And he coloured the picture.
That was a nice gear change, Murray.
He was motorsport.
It really does do the business.
You know, people say to me, what's the proudest moment of your life? And I say, this is the proudest moment of my life. It's the OBE, and it was given to me by Her Majesty the Queen, and it was given to me for services to motorsport and broadcasting. They don't throw these around like confetti, I can tell you.
I made a series with Murray called F1 Rewind about Formula One archive footage and so on, and he turns up for the 2 days of filming. We're making 10 shows in 2 days, and Murray's in his 90s. He is full of energy, full of passion. I'm a bit jet lagged. In fact, he's almost holding me up as we're filming, and he was just wonderful. The same effervescent Murray that you would expect.
Yes, Susie, for my money, 1976 was one of the most incredible years we've had in the history of Formula One.
He knew everything that was going on. I mean, he could have been 25 years old. He was extraordinary.
People ask me if I miss it, and I say, of course I miss it. I'm passionate about motorsport, and I was lucky enough to be at the centre of everything. I've been out here for practically a week because I flew out, went to Darwin, came down on the GAN, which is this fantastic train, and I've done the Clipsal 500, which is the touring car thing. How's it for you?
And I thought I was busy.
Formula One is my home. I feel myself come alive when I get close to the roar of the engines. Everywhere I go, there's someone to meet, someone to catch up with. Hello, how are you?
Was Bernie sent me down, they said, you go and talk to him, and Elio De Angelis was playing piano, and the most wonderful pianist, great musician, and a lovely man.
Lovely.
Hello, Murray.
Jenson, how are you?
Good, and you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks very much.
I grew up listening to Murray's voice when I watched Formula One. Also when I watched Rallycross, my father racing. The guy's a legend, and it's nice to see him at the races now and again.
Are you doing an interview?
No, Ted's doing the interview.
Well, what is unusual is that the commentator usually is in the commentary box and they're doing, whereas Murray transcended all that. He was able to go into every particular garage, he was able to go into every driver, he had contact with them in the paddock, which is not often the case. So he had an ability which was very unusual, and he could get what he wanted in terms of a story.
Say hello to the boys. How are you doing?
He was a global phenomenon. If you think about it, lots of different countries took his commentary, so everybody knew him.
I was born into a motorsport family. My father was a very successful professional racing motorcyclist. If there had been a World Championship before the war, he would have won it, I think, in 1928. This is my father, actually. One of the great events before the war was the Ulster Grand Prix. In 1928, he won it. And this is a Gordon Crosby drawing of him. This is Charlie Dodson, and they raced together like that for 3.5 hours. I almost worshipped my father. He was a wonderful man. And I very much respected what he did, and I wanted to be like him, I suspect, subconsciously. And when the war finished, I started racing motorcycles in the fond belief that I would show the old man how a motorcycle really ought to be ridden. I'm a bit of a model freak. I like to have them to remind me of where I've been and what I've seen. These are 3 models I made of when. I should sound modest. I made them out of a kit. I emphasise I didn't lovingly cut them out of wood. Because people associate me with car racing, but I lean over backwards all the time to say that I'm just as passionate, if not more passionate, about motorcycle racing. That's where I started. You know what they say, those that can do and those that can't talk about it. I started talking about it. And whilst the first commentary I ever did was the British Grand Prix 1949, the year before Formula One began at Silverstone.
Went past Fred Ashmore in the San Remo Maserati with the greatest of ease, but Billy Cotton certainly seems to have lost none of his verve from the former.
The BBC then got in touch with him next week and said, British Grand Prix went well, Murray. We've actually got a hole in the commentary team for the motorcycle races at the TT, at the Isle of Man, the TT. Would you care to go? Would I care to go and do it? My father was the lead commentator.
What a wonderful variety of exhaust notes that we heard at this year's TT races. 2 strokes, 4 strokes, singles, twins, fours. They were all there sounding like this.
Before Murray Walker, there was Graham Walker, his father. And that's where Murray Walker entered our family through my father being such an enthusiast of motorcycle racing, not car racing, motorcycle racing. I was never allowed a motorcycle, too dangerous.
From 1949 until 1962, when my father sadly died, he and I were the only father and son commentary team, I think, that the BBC's ever had.
And so to the last lap. Surtees was well away when King thundered past the grandstand in second place. It's frankly impossible to describe just how bad the conditions were, but this was how Surtees himself saw things when Murray Walker spoke to him immediately after he'd crossed the line.
John, congratulations on a fantastic victory. What was it like and how do you feel?
Well, I just feel very, very cold and I can't hardly move at the moment, but I certainly wouldn't like to have to ride another race like that.
If anything, I'm even more enthusiastic about bikes than I am about cars. And when I had the ultimate happening in front of me, with scrambling, I used to open my mouth and the words poured out.
On television, it's coming through a speaker. If you're standing next to Murray and he's actually commentating, it's at about 150 decibels. It's quite incredible lungs on it.
Go, go, go! And they've all gone away well. No, there's one left, right.
Might not get everything right, but the enthusiasm and the knowledge and preparation and the voice, the best of the best, by far.
And they're seeing now their hero come through.
I mean, it's like an opera singer, just not singing in Italian.
And now the speed builds, builds, builds.
That was his empire within the confines of a commentary box. You'd have heard from a lot of people about his commentary style, his rather ebullient, very physical style of commentary.
Prost leads, Hill second, Vendlinger is third, and Ayrton Senna is up to fourth position ahead of Schumacher.
I've always insisted on talking standing up, but my commentary partner of 14 years, 1976 world champion James Hunt, had a different style.
What you have to understand, which probably, if you think about it, for the people at home can hear it. You see, for Murray, commentating is a complete physical operation. He commentates not just with his voice, but with his whole body.
So here we are at Silver Hatch. The car's on the grid. 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's go, go, go for the Silver Hatch Grand Prix.
They both believed that what they were going to say was more interesting than the other person's commentary. And we resorted to having only one microphone, because otherwise they would have just both talked all the time. As he had something to say, James would hold his hand out. And when Murray had finished his sentence, he'd give the microphone to him.
Well, I wave, try and catch his eye, pass my hand in front of his face. That very rarely works. And then depending on how badly I want it, depends how hard I prod him, right? And then I don't necessarily get it.
Brilliant start by the Austrian driver in the black Sauber.
And then on this one occasion, James had something to say, and he's got his hand out, and eventually Murray's carrying on, and he's carrying on. James stands up, and he's just grabbed Murray by the scruff of the neck, and Murray has got the microphone in one hand, and he's brought his fist back to here.
OK, here we go. And I'm the commentator here.
Yeah, and I'm taking over, buddy. All right, this is Big Chris, your new race commentator.
I was absolutely incandescent with rage at having my commentary interrupted, and I actually had my fist back to give him a fourpenny one, and I looked across the box, and Mark Wilkin, the producer, was going, "No, Murray." So I didn't, and that preserved a beautiful friendship.
Here is race leader Nigel Mansell. He comes up alongside and takes Dudley. Alio, they clip each other.
And Mansell was very lucky to not be taken off by that ridiculous piece of driving by Alio, who didn't even look at his mirrors. He didn't even know Mansell was there. And the man who crashes at every Grand Prix anyway.
James's ability to antagonise deliberately and see how far he could push Murray, and then Murray, being the gentleman he is, allowing that to happen to the point then he would push back. And so I just think the chemistry was so wonderful.
I remember putting the British Grand Prix on the air one year from Silverstone, and we did the whole of the start of the Grand Prix from the grid, and I was climbing the stairs up to the top of the Shell Tower, and behind me was James, strolling up the stairs. He had a pint of lager in each hand. And he said, "Hi, Steve." He said, "I'm glad I saw you." He said, "Is there any Sunday cricket on after the Grand Prix? If there is," he said, "I'll hang around and watch it. But if there isn't, I'll probably leg it a couple of laps before the checker flag." And I thought, "Oh, fine, James." And the cars were just coming round Woodcote, and he walked into the commentary box, put 2 pints of lager down, and you could see Murray standing alongside thinking, "My goodness, I put in all the hard work, and this guy comes along with his own particular kind of style." So it wasn't the perfect kind of chemistry in terms of the practical way the partnership worked, but on air it was terrific because there was an edge to it, there was a kind of conflict to it.
Grand Prix should be 200 miles or 2 hours, whichever is the lesser. So we didn't have to sit here and get bored out of our minds for 3.5 hours.
And if your idea of boredom is driving around Monaco for 3.5 hours in the rain, James, it certainly isn't mine.
Murray was talking about one of the drivers, and he was saying to James Hunt, he was saying, "James, he tells me that part of the issue is he just can't control these turbocharged cars. He has more power than the other drivers, but it's the car that's the problem." And James Hunt just deadpan, just went.
And all I can say to that is bullshit.
And you're talking about the BBC in the 80s, like people didn't say that.
So anyway, there goes Arnaud.
I am ashamed and embarrassed to have to say that, no, I did not let James look at my notes. In fact, he accused me once of actually shielding them so that he couldn't see them. But it's a dreadful thing to say, but my attitude was, I've sweated blood to get these notes out, and I don't see why a lazy so-and-so like James Hunt should benefit from all the work I've done.
James, I have seen lots of people who are incomparably better than I am, obviously, stalling when they get away from the start. So what do you have to do to avoid that? I don't want to make a fool of myself before I even leave.
No, you just got to keep the revs up enough to keep the engine running smoothly, right? So
They're poles apart. But it brought, I believe, the best out in James Hunt. And I think at times it brought the best out in Murray.
No, I don't think we deliberately built it. We have different temperaments.
That's right, it's just our different styles, and I like to think that the contrast works well. I think it makes for a good balance.
He had a carefree side and a social life that most racing drivers would never have been able to sustain.
There's one thing I hate. Parties at James Hunt's house.
Champagne, anybody?
Okay, at times you could say, that was a hell of a comedy act at times. And then at times you could tell, wow, it was electrifying in the intensity that came across. And you've got to have two special people to do that.
In my early days of commentary, I had a full-time job in the advertising business, what my mother called a proper job. I would finish in London, in St James's Square, which was where my office was, on Friday evening. I would meet my wife, and then we would drive to Yorkshire, because that's where the scrambles usually were. And I think our record for that was 30 successive weekends.
First and foremost, he was just a fan of motorsport, and it didn't matter. 2 wheels, 4 wheels, if it went and it made a noise, Murray enjoyed it.
Are you with somebody who's riding in this?
Yes.
What number is it?
359.
359.
He was in second, but I think the bike
Oh, really?
stopped.
Well, it looks as though he's going to be second again soon.
Murray holds such a special place in everyone's hearts that he's walking up and down and he just speaks to someone, and that is the best thing that's happened to them that day, that week, maybe even that year. As we've gone past, you see them going, oh, I just spoke to Murray Walker. That was Murray Walker. It's lovely, lovely to see.
Scrambling, as it was then called, as opposed to motocross now, was on the box virtually every weekend. And it was tremendously popular.
Well, hello and welcome to the Frozen South. And let me say straight away that it's practically a miracle that this meeting is on.
I was a bike head, as was Murray. You needed Murray to be there to tell you what was going on, because he just overflowed with enthusiasm over everything. So it was exciting anyway, but Murray added his special magic to it.
And here are 3 men that everybody is going to be watching here today. Number 64.
I think Murray's enthusiasm had a big influence on me when I was a young lad, wanting to race bikes.
And here on my right is Dave Bickers, who was European champion in 1960 and world champion in 1961. Dave, what are the conditions like here today?
Well, very, very slippery.
When you say...
I was just saying, I mean, I used to commentate in the 1960s on this, and the bikes are visually identical.
Yeah, pretty much
just like they used to ride then.
Yeah, that's right. Did you race back then, or...?
Not very much. I talked about it.
Yeah?
Scrambling is an obsession, and when I started commentating on it, it was the key that unlocked my career. And for the next 40 years, if it moved on wheels, I talked about it.
Well, it's very, very slippery here. You don't need me to tell you that. Pete Dam wins. Looks through a completely clean windscreen, and that's the big advantage, of course, of being in front. And that's the big disadvantage of getting your line wrong. I don't think John Reed is going to have a hope. Yes, he is! Reed is through! He's going for it! Oh, my goodness, he's through! And look at that! Barry Sheen not only looks over his shoulder, but takes his left clutch hand off the handlebar and waves to Kenny Roberts.
I remember in the late 70s, 1979, my dad was laughing at the TV, and I asked him what he was laughing at, and he didn't really explain the full story, but it was Donington, it was the Kenny Roberts, Barry Sheen story, where, with total effrontery, Barry Sheen waves at Kenny Roberts. Of course, he wasn't waving at all.
I am bracing my feet against the toe board. I'm strapped in very firmly indeed.
This was fun, but all the while I was juggling 2 jobs. Commentating was a hobby, and my proper job was still in advertising. I was young, and I had the stamina, and because I loved doing both things, I had a fabulous job. The advertising suited me perfectly.
M-E-E-T is meat.
It's a pretty tough dog-eat-dog business. I used to go around with the pet foods representatives to the shops selling it in, and if they were suspicious about the quality and queried it, we would open a can of Kitty Cat and eat some in front of them. The accounts that I looked after were Mars Confectionery, Pet Foods, which was a sister company of theirs, Dunlop Tires, Electricity.
Opal fruits made to make your mouth water. water.
But I'm traditionally associated with
A Mars a day helps you work, rest and play.
but I didn't think of that slogan. If I had, I would be very pleased. But I had a lot to do with Trill makes budgies bounce with health, and I also had PAL, P-A-L, prolongs active life.
I feel like a racing car with 4 legs. Must be terrible for the old man. Only 2 legs, and no pal in his dinner.
I had loved my advertising job, but I was getting towards my sell-by date. If you're 59 and a half in an advertising agency, as I was, you have lasted the course pretty darn well.
Oh, John Welch is now he's getting aboard, and now that's it, bang, bang, and off. Oh, dear.
I'm lucky enough for people still to be asking me to do things I want to do. And when you get to my age, the way to keep going is to keep this occupied. If you don't keep this occupied, you're in trouble. Well, I never had that problem because when I stopped the advertising, all the other stuff started escalating and I was busier than ever.
His progression was from motorcycles and autocross and motorcycle racing, but eventually, of course, Formula One was the thing that really Murray Walker is the voice of motor racing.
And Barrichello will have lost a bit of momentum, and Alesi is going for it now. Alesi is going through, up to Häkkinen, and he's got ahead of the McLaren.
You hear the voice before you see the man.
You don't need to see Murray to know it's Murray.
Murray's got a strange voice.
Senna moves across. He's keeping Mansell back, and he wins.
It cuts through the air.
If you were to say what sort of engine Murray Walker's voice was, you'd have to say it's a V12. It's certainly not a turbocharged hybrid engine.
Go! But I mean, he's meaning it from the bottom of his heart.
And they're breaking ranks. The Union Jacks are waving.
It was as though somebody had given me an injection of some terribly powerful stimulant drug.
And Senna is stopping. This is a really dramatic development, and Senna is going to be pointless.
It makes you think, my God, this is really exciting, you know. But then when you see it somehow it's Murray building it up into the crescendo that only Murray can do.
And Nigel Mansell stops to take his rival Ayrton Senna back to the pits.
He made the whole world of Formula One seem so much more exciting than actually the reality is.
This is the opportunity that Senna's looking for, and he's going through. Out! Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. They meet. This is what we were fearing might happen during the race. And that means to say that Prost has won the World Championship.
I wanted to get them by the throat, and fire them up.
It's champagne time.
I remember once getting Murray's headphone cable caught around my ankle.
Well done, Nigel.
And I pulled him across the commentary box, head first, as he was still commentating on the race. It was Monza. And the look he gave me, if looks could kill, I wouldn't be sitting here now talking to you for sure.
I remember there used to be producers in this very building who would be screaming down his earphone to talk over the picture, because he'd be talking about something else.
And inside his fireproof underwear.
We had a producer at one time, a pretty feisty Scottish chap called Jim Reside, and Jim would say, "Pause, Murray, pause, Murray."
3 lights, 4 lights, 5 laps. Pause.
He's so one-on-one with what's going on the track, and I love that. I think that's absolute and utter and total commitment.
He was so engrossed in his commentary, I felt sure that if I tiptoed out of the back of the commentary box and went home, he wouldn't notice until the end of the race.
And Nigel Mansell wins the 1992 British Grand Prix in terrific style.
When it wasn't exciting, he made it exciting. Murray brings life to everything. His predictions are so spot on. We know that's not true, don't we, Murray?
Prost now on his way to his 6th Grand Prix victory. There goes Prost. Off.
Yeah, Murrayisms, yeah.
If I'm not very much mistaken, he said. I am very much mistaken. He used to fall into these sort of pitfalls.
There's nothing wrong with his car except that it's on fire is a brilliant one.
Now for real spectacular driving, watch this. And nearly that's it. There's a big body job to be done.
One of my personal favourites, which is factually correct. With half the race gone, there's half the race left to go.
What am I saying? What am I saying?
Well, really, I have to admit, my wife says I'm not interested in anything if it hasn't got an engine.
I did, we were both on Celebrity Mastermind, not on the same programme.
Occupation?
Retired motorsport commentator.
And your chosen subject?
Formula One.
In 2 minutes, starting now. Which British team won the first Formula One Constructors' Cup in 1958?
And he came up to me a few weeks later and he said, oh, you did ever so well on Celebrity Mastermind. He said, I found it very difficult. He said, they asked me all these Formula One Grand Prix questions.
Nigel Mansell's chance of winning the 1986 Drivers' Championships disappeared when his left rear tyre exploded at 180 miles an hour on which circuit?
Suzuka, Japan.
Adelaide. Which British driver raced...
And I said, well, yeah. I said, but that is your specialist subject, Murray. Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. It summed up Murray.
Martin Brundle.
Johnny Herbert.
Commentators and broadcasters at their best aren't actually thinking about what they're saying.
You could cut the atmosphere with a cricket stump, was something that wouldn't spring to most people's minds.
And knowing exactly where Nigel Mansell is because he can see him in his earphone. See him in his mirror.
There are 7 winners of the Monaco Grand Prix on the starting grid today, and 4 of them are Michael Schumacher. The thing is, you know what he means.
Every now and again, the charm of it is that you'll get somebody's name wrong. And everybody will say, well, there's a Murray. It's a Murray. Because you've picked up the wrong name. I mean, he's quite often called me Jim Stewart because of Jim Clark. I don't mind at all.
Welcome to Silverhatch.
Oh, thanks. I've heard a lot about it, Mr. Gearstick.
No. He's a Mr. Carburetor.
There's a quote somewhere where he asked me about McLaren, I think, or something.
Bernie, it's some 17 years since you bought McLaren. What do you remember best?
I don't remember buying McLaren. Which was just funny.
Yes,
that was Murray.
Here we are. Murray Walker Lifetime Achievement, it says here. He's a very much misunderstood man, is Bernie Ecclestone. He is extremely tough, and I wouldn't like to be trying to do a business deal against Bernie because I know I would lose and he would win. But he has got a fabulous sense of humour. Stop for a moment. I've just thought of something. Bernie's always been tremendously kind to me. I'll give you an example. 1 year before the Monaco Grand Prix, on the Thursday I think, I was walking around the track to have a look at it, and a Fiat limousine draws up alongside me, and the window goes down and there's a pair of horn-rimmed glasses looking at me, and a voice says, "Do you want a lift?"
When Bernie thought that he was going to leave Formula One, he put Murray in his own car in the driver's parade. That's never happened before, and I don't think it will ever happen again.
It was nothing unusual for him because he was respected and liked by all the drivers, so it's the sort of thing you'd expect.
And he said, I was passing a jeweller's in Bond Street the other day and I saw this and I thought you might like it. What is it? It's a gold reproduction of the old BBC table microphone. And I said, gosh, Bernie, I don't know what to say. Thank you very much. Well, you are the BBC, aren't you? He said.
Here in Portugal, this is round 14 of the 16 race.
What is brilliant about Murray is that he is not perfect. And a lot of people are sports broadcasters and they're just constantly trying to achieve perfection. Let's make no mistakes, let's get the facts right, let's get the words right. Murray was not about that. Murray was about living in the moment.
The response to the accelerator is absolutely unbelievable.
We'd start to hear the engines perhaps in pre-qualifying on a Friday, and Murray would go, wow, listen to that, isn't that great, isn't that fantastic? And we'd all be sitting, it's early morning, Murray was sitting in the traffic going, no, but all these people, they love what we love, isn't that fantastic? And that was Murray right the way through. He lived and breathed it, and he managed to convey that excitement on the broadcasts.
When we met, I felt my life begin.
That was it. Experience of a lifetime.
There it is, Sterling Moss. Michael Schumacher, my mama, who lasted until she was 101 years old. She married my father in 1922, and I was always her little boy. There she is, my beloved wife, Elizabeth. What do I call her? I call her the management because she's in charge.
You and I possibly might refer to one's wife before one does something. Now, I have a feeling that Murray would go out and do it and then suffer the consequences afterwards. But I think that is his temperament and his character.
It's fair to say that an important part of my character was forged here at Bovington Army Base in Dorset in 1942. This is where I first met my great friend Peter Jenson, and where Trooper Murray Walker trained to be a tank commander.
Clutch down, engage second gear, release the clutch gradually, increase the revs, and away you go in a Sherman. Fabulous!
I know it sounds ridiculous now, but there were 3 glamour jobs to have during the war, and one of them was to be a pilot, and because of these there was no question of me being a fighter pilot. Another one was to be in submarines, and somehow I didn't fancy being underwater very much. And the third one was to be in tanks, because this was the time of the 8th Army in Africa. And I saw myself sitting in the turret of the tank with my cap on and with a plume of sand behind me, charging across the desert, all very glamorous and spectacular. And of course it isn't like that at all.
Murray was full of optimism and go. He really was. He was good enough to take me to see his parents. They were 2 absolutely charming people. But I remember his mother saying when we were leaving, "Do look after Murray, don't let him do anything stupid." And I thought, well, not really a carer, but I will keep an eye on him.
I idolised my father, and I was his only son. So somehow I wasn't surprised when the old man got himself accredited as a war correspondent and appeared on the banks of the Rhine to check on me in the middle of the Allied advance. It was an emotional meeting.
In 1944, when I joined my regiment in Holland, we had the miserable experience of sitting on the wrong side of the river at Arnhem and seeing the airborne go in there and gloriously fail. And we could see parachutes hanging from the trees with their equipment and people in some cases. The whole sky over us was black with Dakotas and bombers towing gliders full of airborne troops who went in, and we crossed the Rhine. And yes, there was some extremely bloody, difficult, demanding fighting, particularly in the Reichswald forest, where the Germans had Panzerfausts, which was an infantry-held device which could knock out a tank quite easily. And if you're in the turret of a tank, when a Panzerfaust hit it, it was curtains for everybody. But we got through all that, and then the German army had virtually given up, and they were retreating westward as hard as they could go, because they were basically trying to get away from the Russians. We, in a tank regiment, were advancing eastward, and on the same piece of road, the German army was retreating westward. And I remember there was one point when I was sitting in the turret of my tank, and I looked down, and there was a German open Mercedes-Benz staff car with 4 obviously very high-ranking German officers in it. I was eating a tin of Spam. I didn't actually say, "Hello, Fritz, you all right then? Getting on okay?"
We did 3 days almost flat out in tanks with part of the American 101 Airborne Division on the backs of the tanks in order to get up there to meet the Russians before they come any further.
And we actually met up with our first 3 Russians, and we did all the handshaking and thumbs up, and they said, Lubeck, Lubeck? And we said, we're in Lubeck, mate. We got there before them. Oh, that's one way of stopping it. Heaven knows how many times I have been round the world, and heaven knows how many countries I've been to, and heaven knows how many fantastic races I've seen.
Wheel-to-wheel stuff, look at this, they're almost touching.
How many wonderful friends I've made.
Here in Portugal, this is round 14 of the 16-race World Championship and the end of the European season.
When I got on a Boeing 747, I knew everybody on the aeroplane, and everybody knew me.
Now, all together, gentlemen. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, Grand Prix!
Yeah, here we are. Here's Michael Schumacher.
Mary, on behalf of the drivers,
Oh,
I would like to present this.
Michael.
I would like to thank you for all the job you have done for us so far.
God, I don't know what to say. Michael Schumacher's just given me a bottle of champagne, which has been signed by all the drivers. Thank you very much indeed, Michael. Martin, bless you. Bless you.
To this day, he's the only commentator that I can possibly recall that has the ability to go into each and every garage. He's able to talk to every driver, every team boss. He was able to go to see Bernie. They were kind of kindred spirits. They could understand each other.
These are all, to get anywhere in Formula One these days, you have to have the electronic swipe pass. Bernie Ecclestone said, in future Murray's going to get one of the red passes. Well, these are not like gold, they're like platinum embellished with gold and diamonds in Formula One.
He was hugely respectful. If somebody said to him this was off the record, he adhered to that and he respected that. But he did like to get his own story out.
Murray is like the father to everybody. He is so brilliant at being supportive, encouraging, oozes professionalism like there's no tomorrow, and he makes you laugh.
It was like meeting a friend. When you're being interviewed by Murray Walker for the first time, you suddenly realise this must be the big time, because if he's interviewing you, then you're entering into the hallowed kind of pantheon of people that he's interviewed.
You're looking super fit. What have you been doing over the winter? Here's Graham Hill in his Lotus 49. I know Damon very well, and I'm an enormous admirer of what he's done and what he's achieved and what he's like. I had commentated on his double world champion father, Graham Hill, and I had seen Damon as a young child growing up. And when Graham's private plane crashed at Elstree, and all of a sudden the Hill family were in very difficult financial circumstances.
He's someone who's been in our life very much at some very heightened times.
Damon started racing bikes, paying his own way, being a courier, and I used to see him at Brands Hatch. He was the Brands Hatch Clubman's 350 champion, I think. And then Betty persuaded him to go into cars rather than bikes because she thought bikes were dangerous. So I had a pretty close emotional bond because of all that background.
And that looks, Schumacher's off. Schumacher's lost time. Hill goes by.
Oh, out goes Schumacher. The German is out of the Australian Grand Prix, and Damon Hill only has to keep going to be world champion of 1994, but can he keep going?
And it has been a bone of contention ever since about whether or not Schumacher could have and did do it deliberately, or whether, as I have always been generous enough to say, was just regaining his racing line. But whatever, it lost Damon Hill the championship, and it was a fantastic climax to the season.
If he could have just finished 2 points ahead of Michael Schumacher, he would have been world champion in only his second full season of Grand Prix racing.
I thought he's a very deep character, Damon, and Murray managed to draw him out a little bit, and they had a lot of warmth and respect too.
And what about now? Back to Georgie and the family, or having a bit of a rest?
No, I'm going straight back home, and I've got to see the children because I haven't seen them for over 2 weeks, and I don't want them sort of walking off with some other daddy. I want them to make sure they remember me. Hello, Oliver, Joshua.
You know he means well. You know he wants you to be your best and everything. But he will ask you the direct, difficult question. There's no doubt about that. He's not going to shy away from putting you on the spot.
It's go! And Damon Hill leads into the first bend.
Murray.
There's been a shunt. It's Hill.
Murray, we're just out for a quiet pizza. Stop commentating.
Hill orders a Pizza Hut pepperoni and cheese stuffed crust.
And here comes the pasta.
It's a pizza, Murray.
Hill's going for it. And he's spun his pizza through 180 degrees. And Hill finishes second again.
Murray, I think, brought him out of his shell a little bit. And Damon trusted Murray, and still does to this day.
And Damon Hill exits the chicane. That is his wife, Georgie. She's seeing her husband become world champion, and I've got to stop because I've got a lump in my throat.
He's just said famously, I'm going to have to stop because I've got a lump in my throat. And, you know, even now I'm starting to well up. I mean, it's such a beautiful way to sign off at that point. You know, he's a commentator. He's not supposed to stop talking. But to admit that this is an emotional thing is, it makes me feel fantastic, I think, because he put his signature on the bottom of the picture, and it's there for all time.
Believe me, it came from the heart.
Probably it meant the world to Damon. Probably the next person it meant the most to in the world was Murray Walker, I would have thought.
When you come out of the car and you just become world champion, and the first face you see, you kind of go to Murray, don't you? You know, that's one of the people you want to get to as soon as possible to tell your story.
Damon Hill, world champion. What about that?
It's just so fantastic. I can't tell you, Murray. I was driving along and I could hear you in my head. I was.
And it tells you something else as well, that he might have said, I heard your voice in my head, but Damon Hill's thinking of Murray Walker at that moment. So that's how important Murray was to Damon over that time.
And I think it's that ability for Murray to bring sincere emotion to the viewer, which has made him universally liked. You know, I wouldn't pick many men to be stranded on a desert island with, but if I had to pick a man to spend several years, then Murray would be a great companion.
The Murray and Nigel show was fantastic.
It is now all down to Nigel Mansell as far as the Ferrari fans are concerned. There is Gerhard Berger having failed to score a world championship point, and Mansell goes through. Oh, fantastic!
An awful lot of the races that I have found exciting had Nigel Mansell as the star.
I think it's always Murray's voice on it, with James and a few other people. Very proud, incredibly proud.
I remember waking up in the middle of the night to watch Adelaide when Nigel could have won the World Championship and his tyre blew. And I can't remember exactly what Murray's words were, but I was as disappointed as anyone because Nigel was someone that I looked up to and I would have loved to have seen him win the World Championship.
And look at that! And colossally, that's Mansell! That is Nigel Mansell, and the car absolutely shattered. He's fighting for control, and you can see what's happened.
Colossally, it's Mansell. I mean, you can't imagine this stuff. It's fantastic.
My commentary position was scaffolding and planks, and Nigel just went literally in front of the scaffolding that I was standing on, stopped by the Armco, and I remember getting very hysterical about this could affect the World Championship. It has affected the World Championship.
There is the unfortunate Nigel Mansell, his face a mask of tragedy, seeing his World Championship chances slipping away.
Murray was able to jump out the television at you sometimes.
Nigel, first of all, will you carefully and slowly take your hat off? You've got an enormous bump on your head. Can you let them see it?
I don't know whether...
Right up there. Oh, I'm sorry.
He pushed it like that, and I just looked at him. The pain was amazing, and I said, I love you, but if we weren't on camera...
The tradition, and it's not one I approve of, to be quite honest with you, is for the crowd to go onto the course as they do in Le Mans And that's very dangerous, of course, because there are drivers a lap or so behind the leaders who are still going at racing speed. Now, is Mansell going to stop and offer for the second year in succession a lift to Ayrton Senna? The answer is no, because I imagine he wouldn't be too keen on doing it a second year in succession.
Any driver who had any smart brain would go, I'd like to talk to Murray. You could learn an awful lot from Murray, even doing the job of being a race car driver.
Have you guys got any questions for Murray? I don't know if you want to ask him.
Yeah, well, how old were you in 1948?
25. No, you weren't 25.
I was.
That's amazing. So what's your... Come on, Murray.
1948, they're the ones without... They didn't have no seat belts. That was around that time the
When I started, Lewis, the engine was in front of the driver.
Flintstone cars back then.
No safety belts. You don't realise how easy you have it.
Easy.
But they were going a lot slower than you do.
Yeah. Lewis Hamilton is pretty close to being one of the greatest of all time. But if he goes on as he has gone on in this quite incredible career that he's had and is having, he will join the ranks of the exalted to become a GOAT, G-O-A-T, greatest of all time, very deservedly.
I know you like football. Tomorrow, Italy plays qualifying.
We only have 100,000 of you out there. 200,000
Listen, you're on the verge of being in the commentary box. How do you feel about it?
I'm nervous, actually, because I think it's a big responsibility. And I've said, actually, that, and you'll relate to this, but I feel proud to be on the BBC representing the great British public and their view of the motorsports world and the Formula One world. And I mentioned in one of the interviews I did that my earliest memory as a young boy was watching the BBC Two highlights with yourself and James.
I did your first interview in 95, was it in Spain?
94.
94, yeah.
Well, Murray Walker has been in the coal-fired household since as long as I can remember. My father was a big fan of motorsports, he went to Grand Prix, and I think I was probably as excited to meet Murray for the first time as I was to drive a Grand Prix car for the first time.
Can I trap you and say hello? You're looking well.
There you go, mate.
Yeah,
You're looking good too, mate.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to ask you a million questions. I just wanted to say hello. The old boys back in Formula One. It's a question I get asked a lot, and there is no simple answer because you can't really compare the drivers of one generation with the drivers of another. But having said that, Schumacher is the greatest of all time statistically.
And Michael Schumacher wins the Spanish Grand Prix after an absolutely superlative drive.
Whether you regard him as the greatest of all time is a matter of opinion, because then you've got to think of people like Ayrton Senna, Jim Clark, Fangio, who in my opinion is the greatest of all time.
I was in Silverstone the other day in one of the meetings we had with the team, and there's this room we had dinner in. There's all those famous sentences from you.
Oh yes.
And a lot of them about me.
That was at the hotel in the restaurant.
Exactly.
Yes. All the mistakes I've made.
not only mistakes, but all the good
When I
things.
joined the BBC, Jonathan Martin, who was the head of sport, said, 2 words, Murray, you always have to think very carefully about using. One is tragedy, and the other is a disaster.
The 7 times Formula One champion Michael Schumacher is out of a coma and out of the intensive care unit where he's been treated since suffering severe head injuries in a skiing accident last December.
Michael Schumacher's situation is tragic in the true sense of the word. When you think of the fact that he spent every waking moment of his working life risking his life every time he got in the car, only to have that dreadful fall while he was skiing, having fun. He's got a loving family, wonderful wife, fabulous home, all the money he could possibly want, and he's in the situation that he's in now. That really is a tragedy in the true sense of the word.
You know, we talk about difficult commentaries, and beyond any doubt, Murray has always said that the most difficult one was Imola, 1st of May 1994, Ayrton Senna's death.
Certainly, at that time, one of the greatest racing drivers who's ever lived, and who, as a racing driver, was known worldwide, respected, admired, loved, adored. In Brazil, he was a god. In Japan, he was a god, more than any other racing driver.
And Ayrton Senna is up to 4th position ahead of Schumacher and challenging Wendlinger as they go round the right-hander into the old hairpin. Senna is up to 3rd.
And after being crowded at the start, a quite brilliant couple of corners by Ayrton Senna.
I don't remember a Grand Prix that was won in such a style. There you put together incredible, fascinating result.
He created a lot of passion and excitement around the world because of the way he went about his sport, not just because it was Formula One, but because of the character, because of the passion, because of the sixth sense that the man had behind the wheel of a racing car. We raced together for 11 seasons until he sadly died in Imola 94, May Day. And I was in that race, and it was an awful day. It was an awful weekend because of Roland Ratzenberger. Barrichello had his big shunt, and it's moments like that which Murray handled incredibly well.
Well, we are right with Michael Schumacher now, and Senna! My goodness! I just saw him plunge off to the right.
Well, that was the low of my commentating career, was undoubtedly the death in vision, live, on television, of Ayrton Senna.
I would imagine the biggest difficulty in the very few seconds afterwards for the commentator is to know, is the driver seriously hurt or not?
I didn't know what was happening.
Is he just unconscious?
And you can't, on the one hand, say, don't worry folks, I've seen 3 other drivers crash in identical circumstances and they were all right, because I didn't know that that was the case. And you certainly don't say, oh my God, this is terrible, I fear it's terminal. So you have to walk the line between those two extremes.
That must be perhaps the most difficult moment of their careers, when they have to somehow keep talking.
Senna is still in the car. It means to say, of course, that Schumacher has gone into the lead, but the important thing is now, how is Ayrton Senna?
And when you're having to talk about it, and you're being watched or listened to by millions of people, it takes an emotional control which doesn't live in everyone's body or everyone's head. And I think Murray was able to retain those qualities and therefore represent what was occurring in a manner that was respectful.
At a San Marino Grand Prix meeting, which has been dogged with the most appalling circumstances. First of all, Rubens Barrichello goes off on Friday at about 150 miles an hour and was extremely lucky that he wasn't very badly hurt. Then we had the dreadful accident for Roland Ratzenberger yesterday, and now this.
Murray had the very difficult task of being the link between all the shots, because the cameras were rolling as they were trying to get Senna out. The link about it all, his friendship was in, I'm sure there was all sorts of things flashing through his mind, and keeping himself together, keeping the commentary going, I think is probably one of the most arduous things that he's ever done.
You miss the camaraderie. The camaraderie in Formula One is fabulous. You are in different teams fighting against each other from Thursday to Sunday over practice and the races. But you're all mates, you travel together, you stay in the same hotels together. It was, and still is, I'm sure, an absolutely fabulous environment to spend your life in. The British Grand Prix of 2001 was one of the most memorable races of my life. They had a banner competition, and there were banners all around the course at the RAF Blue Devils, I think they call themselves, the parachute team, came down in formation, carrying a big banner which said, "We're going to miss you, Murray." And I was standing there with tears pouring down my face, watching them come down.
All the way through his career, he's judged things to absolute perfection, and he got that right as well.
Murray Walker is Murray Walker, that's it, full stop. You don't compare anyone to him.
What else have I got to tell you?
Murray was a one-off. I mean, he's very, very special. I'm biased, I'm sorry.
Couple number 2. I'm Murray Walker. I'm a retired advertising executive, and I'm with my mate Nigel Mansell.
You do the things in life you want to do. I mean, I was very lucky recently that they asked me to take part in that fabulous programme, Pointless. And I nearly bit their hand off because my wife and I watch it virtually every day. It's a great programme.
There we are, well done. Mr. Walker goes to round 2.
I wasn't nervous, but you get the whole competitive thing. You want to win.
We won't go there.
Nigel Mansell, 3 laps, and it's go, go, go! And Nigel Mansell has cheated and got away first.
Murray's trousers on fire style, his excitement and enthusiasm, has transcended commentary, and now there's an awful lot of other commentators that try to do the same sort of thing. But before Murray, no one had done that.
Round the first right-hander, out of the second right-hander, down the old start and finish straight, but this car here is coming into the pits.
Hasn't lost one iota of his respect within the community, whether it be 2 wheels or 4 wheels.
That's a very rare ability for someone to have universal respect like that.
What's that one doing? Oh, he's going into the old start and finish straight, down the start and finish straight into Copse Corner.
They broke the mould when Murray was born. There will not be another Murray Walker, so stop looking.
Murray's mind still wants him to be in a commentary box, commentating on Formula One, and I think actually everybody else across the world would like the same thing as well, because he was just the perfect guy for that job.
He's the epitome of everybody's dream of what they want to be as a commentator. Murray Walker, we adore you.
Go, go, go! That's the big advantage, of course, of being in front. And that's the big disadvantage. And I've got to stop because I've got a lump in my throat.
I'm strapped in very firmly indeed.
Nigel Mansell wins the 1992 British Grand Prix in terrific style.
That was the experience of a lifetime.
And there's lots of action on the track at Silverstone, and that's what it's always been about.